Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to write a speech. So this video has specifically been designed for anyone that is studying AQA English Language Paper 2. We're going to understand how to craft an effective response for your question 5. Now if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. We're also going to be uploading regular videos to help you in preparation for your GCSE exams. Look at the following words and attempt the challenges that follow. So here we have a few different words. We've got candy, we've got bubblegum, fashionable, custard, mixed berries, peer pressure, and trendy. And what I'd like you to do, we'll think about these words, is I'd like you to try and think what kind of word class do these words belong to. So if you're not too sure, what we mean by this is, are they verbs, nouns, adverbs, or adjectives? If you're not too sure what we mean by this, don't worry about it too much. We're going to go through it in a bit more detail in the next part as well. For the super challenge, what I'd like you to do is try and use these words to predict the topic or the theme of the lesson. So as you may know, if you studied English Language Paper 2, that you're going to have two different texts and they're both going to focus on one specific topic. The one we're going to focus on today is going to be linked to all of the words that we just looked at there. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So you can see here, this is what we mean by word class. So we've got our verbs. So these are words that describe an action. We've got nouns. These words describe a person, place, or an object. You have adverbs. These words add to the verb and they often end in ly. You have adjectives. These words describe a noun. And you've got pronouns. These are words that are often linked to identity. So things like I, me, we, they, etc. So if we think about the words that we just looked at then, we had a lot of the different ones here. All of these link to the theme of vaping, which, believe it or not, even though a lot of these words are actually linked to what we'd normally associate with sweets or something linked to childhood, these are things that have actually been used to describe vaping and the current trend with that and what's going on. So what I'd like to think about before we move on is try and think, is vaping a controversial topic? If you're not too sure what we mean by that, and try and justify your answer if you can. A controversial topic is something that might spark a debate, a little bit of an argument. And that's a really good thing to think about, because anything that you see in the media might be something that you get to practice in your actual lessons or actually in the exam. So it's really important that you stay up to date with the current issues and trends within society. So by the end of the video, you'll be able to recall how to create an effective speech, understand the techniques and methods used to be successful, and then finally apply your understanding to your own response to an exam style question. So learning recap. What kind of marks are awarded for question 5? So for question 5 then, we know that this is going to be your writing question, so it's going to focus on your writing skills. You'll need to show your viewpoint on a topic. So this topic will be in a similar theme to the previous questions on the paper. So let's say if you have been doing one about smoking, again smoking has changed, certainly our perception of smoking has changed since the 19th century as opposed to 20th or 21st century, then it will also be reflected in your question 5. It will be on a similar topic or subject. So this question is worth 40 marks. It's important to note that generally speaking, with the whole two papers that you do for English language, roughly around 40 marks will get you a pass. Last year it was about 36 marks per paper, so it's a good idea to try and think, can I do my question 5 at a high rate, because that's going to actually dictate the level of the grade that you get. You get 24 marks for content and organisation. So if you're not too sure what I mean by this, what we're talking about here is our DeForest techniques or our language techniques, and organisation is how you've structured it. So have you varied your sentence structure and have you wrote in paragraphs? Next we have 16 marks for technical accuracy. So generally speaking, when we talk about technical accuracy, we're talking about your spelling, grammar and punctuation. Look at the exam question below and attempt the challenges that follow. So it says then, vaping is a disgusting habit and it must be banned. Too many young children are hooked on this because companies purposely favour their products to taste like sweets. Write a speech for your school in which you express your viewpoint on this statement. So what I'd like to do, now that you're looking at the actual exam question, same thing you should do anytime you get a writing question like this, is trying to identify the TAP of the exam question. Now, if you're not too sure what we mean by this, what we're talking about here is the topic, audience, and the purpose. And this is just going to allow you to break down the question into manageable parts because they can be quite big and quite long-winded. So I'll actually help you to think about specifically what you need to focus on in your writing. Next, we're thinking about a super challenge. Can you give a balanced argument for this kind of question? And try to be ready to justify your answer. And the final one, mega challenge. Come up with 3 or 4 ideas to include in your response. Now this is an integral part of your writing process. You need to be able to come up with those ideas in a really quick and fast manner. The quicker you can do this, the quicker you can start writing. And you will need about 3 ideas to make sure that you're hitting that 5-paragraph mark that we want to get full marks. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the answers below. So on the left hand side then we have our question, and the first thing we're thinking about is the TAP. So first of all then, the topic is, should vaping be banned? Generally speaking, that's really what they were leading towards in that whole question. The audience would be for people who are at school, who we can assume would be the younger audience, and the purpose, to persuade the audience that your ideas are valid on this topic. So if you think about the actual question, it's not saying that you need to argue it needs to be banned. You can actually express your own opinions on it. And again, if you're someone who's actually had experience with this, then you might have your own opinions that you can express towards the actual goal of the writing. Now for the super challenge, can you give a balanced argument? Now this is a little bit of a strange response really, because it's yes but also no. So when you are giving a balanced argument, it's important that you still hold an overriding view. So for example, it shouldn't be completely balanced. You should aim for something like 60-40 in favour of your overall viewpoint. This is making sure that you actually feel strong and confident in your own beliefs, while at the same time having the forethought to acknowledge the other side of the argument. It's important as well, when you think about this question, trying to stretch and challenge yourself. You can either read the text, or if you want to actually download this as a proper full PowerPoint, you can access the video as well. That will help you to think about this issue in a little bit more detail. Look at the extract below and attempt the challenges that follow. So all of this is still linked to our idea of vaping. So it says then, should vape companies go up in smoke? Over the past 5 years, vaping has swept through the nation like an unstoppable force, invading schools, work settings and homes, as many of us look at it as a healthier alternative to smoking. Over the past year, however, sensational stories have emerged about the negative impacts they're having on young people, leading many to question, is vaping really better for you than smoking, or are companies simply creating colourful, eye-catching products to trick, deceive and manipulate their customers? So if you'd like to pause the video here and read through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and have a look at the comprehension questions. So we're going to have 5 questions then, and ideally this should take you roughly around 10 minutes to answer. So it says then, what is meant by the term sensational? Now it's important that you don't think about the modern interpretation of this word. Think about how it is used in the media, how it is used in articles, because this is often used in a different way these days to its original meaning. Number 2, identify where the writer has used hyperbole. Now if you're not too sure what I mean by this, this is essentially just exaggeration. Number 3, identify where the writer has used a discourse marker. Again, if you're not too sure what I mean by that, a discourse marker is something that would allow you to go in a different direction in your argument. So it will be words like on the other hand or nevertheless. Number 4, identify where the writer has used a deforest technique. Now if you're not too sure what I mean by deforest techniques, please do check out our other videos. Even if you check out one on functional skills, we do have lots of videos that go through those techniques in more detail. And number 5, would this introduction get a good mark for technical accuracy? Try to justify your answer. So again, with this one, have a think. What do we actually get awarded for technical accuracy? This is the one that you get 16 marks for potentially if you're able to do a good response. So again, if you want to pause the video here, please feel free to do so. Now I'm going to jump ahead and go through the answers. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the answers below. So number 1, In terms of sensational, it means that something is very dramatic. Now, this is something that's often done in the media, especially in newspapers, where they over dramatize a story, right? So let's say if one or two schools are complaining about vapes, they would say every school in the UK is overcome by this vaping epidemic, just to really sell the news story. Number two, the writer has used a hyperbole. There's actually a few examples you could choose from. So like an unstoppable force or invading schools. Number three, the writer has used a discourse marker, however, to show another side of the argument. Number four, we've got many examples of DeForest technique in this introduction. So the writer has used some DeForest techniques. For example, should vape companies go up in smoke? It's a rhetorical question. Sensational stories would be alliteration. Is vaping really better for you than smoking? Is another rhetorical question. And probably my favourite one there is trick, deceive and manipulate. This is a triplet or a group of three. And for the final one then, yes, the writer would get a good mark for the technical accuracy because he's spelt words correctly, he's used some good examples of vocabulary and used a range of punctuation effectively. This is really important to think about because a lot of us get into this bad habit of just using fairly basic punctuation like full stops, commas, exclamation marks and question marks. If you're doing that, you are actually going to limit the amount of marks you're going to get for technical accuracy, and the same goes for things like your actual level of your vocabulary as well. So if we think about the actual exam question, then it was asking us to focus on a speech. So think about what a speech is and how is it different from the other forms of writing. So first of all, speech writing is where you use persuasive language to convince the audience to your point of view. In your response, you need to show an awareness of the audience and have an appropriate sign-off. So it's important to note that obviously in a speech, the first thing you should do is then greet the audience and then end it with thanking them for their time. And then in terms of the other ones as well, it's different from the other forms is because a speech is almost always written to persuade. It is something where you need to have an awareness of the audience. So using techniques like direct address, using rhetorical questions will be really important when you're actually delivering or planning your speech. Now if we have a look back at the exam question, I want you to think about a couple of the challenges on the right hand side. So the first thing I want you to think about is you can use the example introduction to write your first paragraph. Now it's important to note that the example that we just looked through wasn't a speech, it was an article, so you'd have to change a few of the instances to make it actually fit into the format of a speech. The super challenge, try and use a range of DeForest techniques to make your writing engaging. Now if you're not too sure about that, we're going to go through it in more detail in a moment, so don't worry. Also, it's important to note, what do you consider to be a range of techniques? So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail soon. Then finally, use the success criteria on the next slide to assess your writing. So planning your response. So there's different types of planning really. The most important thing is that you don't spend too long doing it. So we have mind maps, spider diagrams, bullet points, and then the one I'm going to go through now, which is checklist planning. If you are struggling to start when you're doing your own plan, you can go through and use the same kind of thing that we're looking at now in the next part. So I want you to have a look at the DeForest techniques. Hopefully you know all of these off by heart now. Ideally when you get into the exam, you'd just be writing down the bits in red and you can tick these off to show that you've used them in your writing. A good thing to do if you are going to spend a little bit of time doing a plan is come up with some draft sentences. So if we have a look at the first one then, I'd like to think what kind of technique has been used in this example. So I believe that it can be hard giving up smoking, however. So if you're not too sure, we mean that they've used an opinion, because it says I believe, and however is a discourse marker, just like we had in the example from the previous part. Next we have, you are presented with challenges, obstacles and serious issues on a daily basis. So that would be a triplet or a group of three. Then we have, who doesn't enjoy fitting in with everyone else at school? Is a rhetorical question. And then we have 90% of students are exhausted and stressed at the end of a working week. So I've put a statistic here because we've said 90%, but if you think about it as well, it also has emotive language, words such as exhausted and stressed, and we also have a little bit of alliteration at the end there, saying working week. And then at the end, Who can blame young people for following the crowd would be your rhetorical question again. So try and have a think, what do we mean by a range of techniques? It is quite difficult to use all of them, but the more you get into the habit of using them, the easier it's going to be when you come into your exam. So in terms of our next lesson then, we're going to go over the following things. So we're going to recall the writing question from this lesson. We're going to understand how to craft and edit an effective response. And then you're going to apply your understanding to draft and edit your own response to the exam question. So this just comes back to this idea that really if you're writing something, you should never really abandon it. You should always come back to it, review it, even if it's 2-3 months down the line. And it's a really good indication to see, have you improved in terms of your knowledge and your understanding, and is there anything that you would change as you would develop it as well. Now if you need any extra support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and all the best with your work and your revision in the future. Bye bye.